The night the lights went out. The air inside Rikers Island was heavy that night. Suddenly, click, the lights cut off. Total darkness swallowed the cell blocks. For a few seconds, the prison felt frozen, like the calm before a storm. Then came the screams. Metal clanged, fists pounded on doors, and inmates shouted in the dark, "Now's our chance." Guards scrambled with flashlights, but batteries were weak. Shadows moved fast, and no one could tell who was where. In that chaos, a group of prisoners tried to break open a gate with a stolen tool. Others used the dark to settle old grudges. Fists flying, unseen until flashlight beams caught blood on the floor. And then someone yelled, "They're coming!" The sound of boots thundered down the hall. The emergency team had arrived, and with them came batons, shields, and a wave of violence. What happened next revealed the shocking truth of Rikers Island. What really hides behind its walls. The island of no escape. Rikers Island isn't just another jail. It's a city within a city, sitting on the East River between the Bronx and Queens. From above, it looks ordinary, rows of buildings, fences, and lights. But once you step inside, you realize it's a place built on chaos. Most people here aren't even convicted yet. They're just waiting for trial. But while they wait, they're trapped in a pressure cooker of gangs, violence, and fear. One night in the cafeteria, a fight broke out. It started small, someone cutting in line for food. In seconds, trays turned into weapons. Guards tried to separate the men, but the fight grew, pulling in dozens. And then it happened. A sharpened piece of metal flashed from a shoe, a homemade shank. Suddenly, the entire room froze. The shocking truth of survival inside Rikers had just revealed itself. The rule of the gangs. Behind the walls, official rules don't always matter. Gangs control who eats, who gets to use the phones, and even who gets protection. If you're new and not connected, you're prey. Inmates describe being taxed. If you want food, a bed, or even to walk safely to the showers, you have to pay up with commissary snacks, money on your books, or sometimes with violence. But when one young inmate refused to pay, the gang leaders made an example out of him. Late at night, they cornered him in the shower area. The water was running, steam filling the room. No cameras, no witnesses. What happened in that shower block was brutal. By the time guards arrived, the boy could barely stand. His swollen face and broken ribs told the story that silence couldn't hide. Guards are ghosts. You'd think guards would keep order. But at Rikers, many are outnumbered, overwhelmed, or sometimes even involved. Some officers trade favors for respect from gang leaders. Others smuggle contraband, phones, drugs, even blades. But that relationship cuts both ways. During one inspection, an officer tried to search a gang leader's cell. Within minutes, word spread across the block. Inmates banged on doors, shouting threats. A riot was building. The officer panicked, radioing for backup. But before help could come, his keys were snatched right out of his belt. Now, inmates had the power. The sound of locks clicking open echoed down the hallway. One door, two doors, more. The block was on the edge of an all-out explosion. The cost of silence. Most inmates don't speak out. Talking to guards means being labeled a snitch, and that could be a death sentence inside. One man, terrified after weeks of threats, finally tried to tell the truth. He slipped a note under a guard's door at night. But somehow, the gang found out. The next morning, his cell was trashed. His mattress torn open, his commissary gone. And when he walked into the yard later that day, a group was waiting. The beating that followed sent him to the medical wing. But the message wasn't just for him. It was for everyone watching. Silence wasn't just expected. It was demanded. The breaking point. Every day inside Rikers adds pressure. The overcrowding, the violence, the hopelessness. It builds like steam in a kettle. Eventually, something explodes. One summer day, tempers boiled over in a housing unit. Two rival groups clashed after an argument over phone time. Chairs flew, fists landed, alarms blared. Guards tried to push in, but the flood of bodies overwhelmed them. Suddenly, fire alarms went off. Someone had set a mattress ablaze. Thick smoke filled the hallways, choking everyone inside. Inmates and guards alike coughed and stumbled, desperate for air. The block turned into chaos, and the prison staff had to make a split-second choice: fight to regain control or retreat and let the fire spread. Rikers Island was at its breaking point, and the truth behind its walls was about to get even darker. Smoke and steel. The fire alarm screamed through the housing unit, mixing with the sound of fists and shouts. Guards had no choice. They fell back, coughing the smoke. Inmates, eyes burning, still fought through the haze. Some used the chaos as cover to settle scores. Others tried smashing windows for air, but the barred glass refused to break. Finally, the sprinkler system kicked in. Water poured down from the ceiling, soaking everything. The fire hissed out, leaving behind steam, blackened walls, and the smell of burnt rubber. But the fight didn't stop. Now it was fists slamming against wet floors, inmates slipping as they tried to swing. When the riot team finally stormed in, armored up with shields and batons, they didn't ask questions. They swung first. Prisoners hit the ground, coughing and screaming. Some raised their hands, surrendering. Others resisted, only to be dragged out in cuffs, blood mixing with the sprinkler water. By the end of it, dozens were injured. But the shocking truth? That wasn't the worst part. The fire had set off the locks on some cells. Malfunctioning doors stayed open, and one group of inmates realized they had an opening the guards didn't yet see. The hidden passage. Rikers was built in pieces, patched over decades. Old tunnels, storage rooms, and unused hallways crisscrossed beneath the jail. Few inmates know about them, but those who do whisper about the passage. In the days after the riot, rumors spread fast. Some said a small group had slipped into a forgotten maintenance tunnel during the fire chaos. No cameras, no guards, just shadows. The truth was even scarier. An inmate, once a janitor, had mapped out parts of the old building in his head. He led a crew into the darkness. Using scraps of cloth and lighters, they made torches. The tunnel walls were damp, dripping water from old pipes. Rats scattered as the group moved deeper. Their goal wasn't just escape, it was survival. They wanted to set up hidden stashes of food, blades, and phones. A backup plan, in case things exploded again. But while they thought they were invisible, a guard on night patrol noticed something strange. A vent cover had been moved, dust disturbed, footprints on the concrete. The secret was out, and Rikers was about to crack down. The crackdown. When the warden learned about the tunnels, fear spread through staff. If inmates could move undetected, control was an illusion. They ordered a full-scale sweep, cell by cell, hallway by hallway. Dozens of guards stormed the blocks at dawn. Boots slammed on concrete. Shields up. Inmates were dragged out of bunks, ordered to strip, their cells torn apart. Mattresses cut open, walls hammered, toilets unbolted. Some inmates lost everything. Letters from family, personal photos, commissary snacks, all tossed into piles and trashed. Tension rose. You could feel it in the air, the silence before something breaks. And then it happened. One inmate, furious at seeing his last photo of his daughter ripped in half, snapped. He lunged an officer. A fight broke out, and within seconds the entire tier erupted. Cups of hot water, soap, and even urine flew at guards. The sweep had turned into another war. By the time it ended, the guards had regained control, but the trust was gone. Inmates whispered, "If they take everything from us, what's left to lose?" The price of power. Inside Rikers, power isn't about strength alone, it's about control. The gangs knew the crackdown had weakened the officers' grip. Now was the time to push harder. One gang leader, known only as Shadow, began organizing meetings in the yard. Hidden under casual talk and card games, they plotted. Who controlled the phones, who moved contraband, who gave orders. All of it was being reshaped. But rival groups caught wind. A turf war was brewing. At first, it was whispers and threats. Commissary stolen here. A shove in the hallway there. But one night in the rec pen, it exploded. Two gangs clashed. More than 20 men locked in a cage, fists flying, blades flashing under the floodlights. Guards tried to break it up with pepper spray, but the spray only made everyone blind and angrier. When the fight ended, the floor was slick with blood. Several men were dragged away on stretchers. Shadow, untouched, stood tall in the corner. Everyone knew what that meant. He now held the island in his grip. The silence after the storm. After every explosion comes quiet, but at Rikers, that quiet is heavy. Inmates walked the halls slower, eyes shifting, waiting for the next spark. Guards patrolled in pairs, hands gripping batons tighter. The administration announced new rules, more lockdowns, less yard time, stricter searches. But the more they tightened control, the more desperate inmates became. Letters from family were delayed, visits canceled, food portions shrank. It was supposed to calm things down. Instead, it lit another fuse. One night, during a routine head count, an officer noticed something strange. A door that should have been locked was ajar. He called for backup, but before they could arrive, shouts erupted from the block. The shocking truth was clear. The gangs weren't waiting anymore. They were making their next move. The escape rumor. Word spread fast. Someone had found a way out. It started as whispers on the tier, passed from cell to cell. There's a weak spot in the wall. A gate that doesn't lock right. Most rumors in Rikers fade out quickly, but this one didn't. Inmates claimed that during the fire, a door in an old hallway jammed half open. If you timed it right, you could slip into the service tunnels. From there, maybe, just maybe, you could reach the outside fence. Hope is a dangerous thing inside prison. It drives men to plan, to risk everything. Some began sketching maps on scraps of paper. Others gathered supplies, bed sheets twisted into ropes, sharpened scraps of metal for defense. But hope also brings fear. The guards caught wind of the whispers. Every night, search teams swept the blocks, looking for tools or notes. Tension rose, because even suspicion of escape meant punishment for everyone. Then one night, a loud bang echoed through the walls. A section of plaster had collapsed in an unused corridor. Dust filled the air. The rumor wasn't a rumor anymore. It was real. The Hunger Games of Rikers. When escape wasn't the main talk, survival was. And survival often meant food. Meals inside Rikers were infamous. Watery oatmeal in the mornings, rubbery chicken, or mystery meat at night. Commissary was gold. Chips, ramen noodles, candy bars. But not everyone could afford it. Gangs controlled who got what. They ran stores inside, buying in bulk from commissary, then reselling at higher prices. Some even charged interest. An inmate who owed snacks could find himself beaten if he didn't pay up. One afternoon, 2 inmates fought over a honey bun. It sounds small, but inside it's life or death. The fight turned bloody, one man smashing the other's face into bars until guards tore them apart. That night, word spread across the tier. The man who lost the fight had allies. Retaliation was coming. By morning, an entire block was on lockdown, and trays of food went uneaten. Hunger wasn't just a punishment. It was a weapon. The corruption web. Behind the walls, contraband flowed like water. Phones, drugs, blades. None of it got there by accident. Some came through visits, hidden in shoes or packages. But most, they came through staff. Some officers saw it as easy money. A pack of cigarettes outside might cost a few dollars. Inside Rikers, it could be traded for 10 times that. A single cell phone could earn hundreds. But corruption was a double-edged sword. Once an officer started working with inmates, they were owned. If they refused to keep supplying, threats followed against them, against their families. One rookie officer, caught smuggling a phone, panicked and tried to back out. Days later, graffiti appeared on the wall near his post. "We know where you live." That night, his car tires were slashed in the staff parking lot. He never came back to work. The shocking truth? Inside Rikers, corruption wasn't rare. It was survival for some guards, too. The mental war. Physical fights are one thing. But inside Rikers, the real battle is often mental. Solitary confinement, known as a box, is where inmates are sent for punishment. A small cell, sometimes for 23 hours a day, with nothing but a thin mattress and your thoughts. Some men lasted days. Others cracked in hours. You could hear it. The shouting through walls, The banging on steel doors, the cries that faded into silence. One inmate, after weeks in the box, began talking to shadows. Guard said he scribbled messages on the wall with toothpaste, convinced someone was watching him through the vents. The shocking truth? Solitary didn't calm violence. It created it. Men came out angrier, more unstable, more dangerous. And one day, when an inmate was released from the box back into general population, he snapped. At yard time, he attacked without warning, charging another inmate with a homemade blade. The cycle never stopped. It only grew worse. Blood in the yard. The yard was supposed to be freedom, a place to breathe air, play basketball, or just stretch in the sun. But in Rikers, the yard was often the most dangerous place. No walls between rival groups. No cameras in blind spots. Just bodies, eyes, and grudges. On one summer afternoon, two gangs met in the yard. It began with a stare down across the basketball court, then insults, then shoves, and then it erupted. Over 50 men charged at each other, fists swinging, blades flashing. Guards sounded alarms, but it was chaos. Some inmates climbed fences, tried to escape the violence. Others curled into balls on the ground, hoping not to be noticed. The riot team stormed in, firing pepper spray, swinging batons. It took nearly 20 minutes to restore control. When it was over, the concrete was stained. Several men were rushed to the medical unit. But the shocking truth? The man who started it all, the one who threw the first punch, was nowhere to be found. Some believed he slipped through a gap in the chaos. Others whispered he had been taken by his own gang for punishment. Either way, the yard had become another battlefield in the war that was Rikers Island. The walls that watch. Rikers isn't just about bars and cells. It's about the constant feeling of being watched. Cameras cover most hallways, but there are blind spots, corners, stairwells, and shadowed areas where violence can happen unseen. Inmates know these spots like hunters know their traps. A simple walk to the showers could turn deadly if someone decided it was your time. One evening, two men were led down a corridor, shackled for transport. As they passed a blind corner, another inmate, unrestrained, sprang forward with a blade hidden in his sleeve. In seconds, the corridor became a war zone. Guards yelled, alarms blared, blood streaked the walls. By the time order was restored, one man lay bleeding on the floor, and the attacker was dragged away, face expressionless. The cameras missed the first strike. That's how quick it happens at Rikers. Violence in the space between frames. Women of Rikers, the island isn't only for men. A section of Rikers holds women too, and their struggles are often hidden from the public eye. Inside, female inmates face unique dangers, harassment, lack of medical care, and exploitation. Some form protective families inside, older women shielding younger ones. Others fall under the control of powerful inmates who demand loyalty in exchange for safety. One woman, known as Marisol, became a legend inside. She fought back, defending a younger inmate during a yard confrontation. Against 3 attackers, she stood her ground, swinging a broken broom handle, until guards broke it up. Her defiance inspired others, but it also made her a target. Days later, during laundry duty, she was ambushed. She survived, but the scars on her face became a permanent reminder. Inside Rikers, bravery comes with a price. The phone wars. Control of the phones is one of the biggest battles inside Rikers. Families wait on the outside, desperate for a call. Inside, gangs decide who gets to talk, and for how long. For many, those calls are the only connection to life beyond the walls. Missing one can mean missing a child's birthday or a mother's last goodbye. One night, an argument over phone time spiraled. 2 men clashed, voices echoing through the tier. Suddenly, fists flew and allies rushed in. In seconds, the phones became a battlefield. Guards rushed in too late. By then, one inmate lay unconscious, blood dripping from his head. His last words before collapsing were about his daughter. He had only wanted 2 minutes to hear her voice. At Rikers, even family ties could spark bloodshed. The forgotten sick. Behind the violence, there's another truth few talk about. The medical crisis inside Rikers. Overcrowding, poor care, and neglect mean many inmates suffer in silence. The clinic is always full, men coughing, others with untreated wounds, some trembling from withdrawal. Nurses do their best, but the system is broken. One man with severe asthma begged for his inhaler. Guards delayed, paperwork stalled, and when help finally came, it was too late. His collapse in the dorm sent shock through the block. For days, inmates banged on doors, demanding answers, but the system rolled on. Another name added to the list, another story buried. The shocking truth? Sometimes survival at Rikers isn't about violence. It's about whether you can make it through the night without medicine. Storm on the island. Nature doesn't care about prison walls. When a massive storm hit New York, Rikers shook. Rain pounded the windows, wind howled, and power flickered across the compound. Floodwaters crept into the lower levels. Toilets overflowed, sewage backed up, and cells stank of rot. Inmates shouted for help, but many guards had abandoned posts to protect themselves. For 3 days, chaos ruled. Food trays arrived late, cold, or not at all. Men fought over bread. Some lit fires in trash cans for warmth. Others used the darkness to plan revenge. By the time the storm cleared, Rikers looked less like a jail and more like a battlefield. Walls cracked, cells flooded, and the smell of decay lingered for weeks. But worse than the storm was the realization it brought. In a true disaster, the island was a trap. No escape, just survival. The hidden codes. Inside Rikers, survival isn't just about strength. It's about communication. Inmates create secret codes to send messages without guards knowing. Some write letters in tiny handwriting on scraps of toilet paper, folded and passed through cracks. Others tap on pipes, the rhythm carrying through the walls. One code became infamous, the 2-knock, 3-knock signal. It was a call for backup, a warning that a fight was about to break out. Guards often heard it, but couldn't trace where it started. One night, during count, a series of knocks echoed through the tier. Within minutes, chaos erupted. 2 gangs clashed at opposite ends of the block, perfectly timed. While guards rushed one side, the other side exploded. The message was clear. The inmates had their own system, one the officers couldn't break. The ghost cell. Every prison has legends, and Rikers is no different. Inmates whisper about the ghost cell, a room in one of the older wings that no one wants to stay in. They say men who sleep there hear footsteps at night, chains rattling, whispers through the vents. Some claim shadows move when no one's inside. Guards laugh it off, but the cell often sits empty, inmates refusing to be housed there. One desperate night, when the prison overflowed, they place a young inmate in the ghost cell. Hours later, he screamed, banging on the door. When officers arrived, he was curled in the corner, shaking, saying, "Someone was in here with me." Whether it was fear, madness, or something else, the legend grew stronger. The shocking truth wasn't just about violence. It was about the haunting weight of being locked away in a place filled with suffering. The Guards Revolt. It's not just inmates who struggle inside Rikers. Guards, too, face pressure beyond breaking point. Long shifts, low pay, constant danger. It pushes many over the edge. At one point, officers staged a sick out. Hundreds called in sick at the same time, leaving posts unmanned. Chaos followed. Inmates controlled dorms. Fights went unchecked, and whole wings were left without supervision. The city scrambled to fill the gaps, sending in emergency forces. But the damage was done. Inmates saw it for what it was, proof that even the people in charge were afraid of the island. That revolt left scars on both sides. Guards distrusted their leadership, and inmates realized the system could crack from the inside. The price of betrayal. Trust is rare at Rikers. Alliances form, but betrayal lurks in every shadow. One inmate, desperate for early release, agreed to become an informant. He gave guards names, smuggling routes, and gang meeting times. For a while it worked. Contraband was seized. Leaders were sent to the box. But secrets don't stay hidden long. Word spread. One morning, as the man walked to chow, the tier went silent. Eyes followed him. Whispers floated in the air. By the time he reached the cafeteria, he was surrounded. What happened next was brutal and fast. Guards dragged him out, broken and bleeding, but alive. His name vanished from the tiers. His story became a warning. Betrayal at Rikers isn't survival. It's a death sentence waiting to be carried out. The court of no mercy. The final shocking truth about Rikers is this. Many inmates never escape its grip, even if they're freed. Court dates drag on for months, even years. Some people sit inside longer than the sentences they'd receive if convicted. Others are released, only to return again. It's a cycle of poverty, violence, and hopelessness. One young man, locked up for stealing food, spent over a year waiting for trial. By the time he stood before the judge, he was a different person, angrier, hardened, with scars from fights inside. His family barely recognized him. That's the hidden cost of Rikers. It doesn't just punish, it changes people. Forever. Death on the island. At Rikers, time itself feels dangerous. Every tick of the clock carries risk. And sometimes death doesn't come from a fight. It creeps in slowly, through neglect and silence. One winter, the heating system in one housing unit broke down. Nights grew icy cold. Inmates banged on doors, begging guards for blankets, for help. Some wrapped themselves in shirts. Some lit scraps of paper in cups, desperate for warmth. But one man, locked in his cell, grew weaker with each passing night. His name barely mattered to the system. Just another number. He had asthma, a condition worsened by the freezing air. When his cellmate tried to call for help, no one came. By morning, the man was gone, his body stiff, his face pale. Guards wheeled him out on a stretcher, silence hanging in the air. That death wasn't from violence. It wasn't from a blade. It was from indifference. And to the men watching, it was more terrifying than any gang fight, because it showed that the system itself could kill you without lifting a finger. The families who wait. Rikers doesn't just cage the inmates. It cages their families too. Every week, mothers, wives, and children line up for hours to visit. The bus ride is long, the wait even longer. They pass through metal detectors, searched and questioned, all for a brief moment behind glass or across a table. A mother clutches her son's hand as they wait, telling him stories about his father. A little girl presses her palm against the window, trying to touch her dad's hand on the other side. Families leave in tears, carrying the weight of goodbye they'll have to repeat again and again. And when calls don't come, when letters don't arrive, the silence eats at them. One woman described it as serving a sentence without being charged. For every man locked inside, there are loved ones outside carrying the pain. The shocking truth is this. Rikers punishes more than just the inmate. It punishes everyone who loves them. Collapse of control. By the late 2010s, even staff admitted the island was slipping out of control. Overcrowding pushed dorms to their limits. Guards were stretched thin, and every day carried new eruptions of violence. Reports surfaced of 4 stabbings in just 48 hours. Guards described walking into housing units where inmates openly carried blades, unafraid. One officer said, "We don't run this place anymore. The gangs do." Lockdowns became the default response. Hours upon hours of inmates sealed inside tiny cells. Food trays shoved through slots, medical visits delayed. But the more the administration tightened its grip, the more the pressure built. And the more pressure, the more explosions. The shocking truth was clear. Rikers wasn't reforming. It was collapsing. Voices from the inside. Still, even in a place built to silence, voices found their way out. Letters smuggled in laundry bags. Phone calls secretly recorded. Testimonies told in court. One letter reached the outside world. The handwriting was shaky, but the words cut sharp. Rikers isn't a jail. It's a machine that eats people. It chews you up and spits you out different. Harder, colder, or broken. And when you leave, it never really lets you go. That letter wasn't just a cry for help. It became evidence in hearings about the future of the jail. Advocates carried those words into City Hall, demanding that the island be closed forever. For the first time, the walls of Rikers weren't just keeping people in. They were letting the truth out, the shocking truth behind the walls. And so, we return to the question, what is Rikers Island? It's not just a jail. It's a mirror of society's failures. Poverty, violence, corruption, neglect. It's a place where gangs rise, guards break, and families fall apart. A place where survival isn't about serving time. It's about making it to the next morning. Behind those walls, humanity and brutality live side by side. You see loyalty, betrayal, silence, screams. You see men who enter as boys and leave as ghosts. The shocking truth is simple. Rikers isn't just an island on the East River. It's a wound on the city, one that refuses to heal. The island that haunts America, this is Rikers Island, the place the world would rather forget, a place where chaos is routine, where survival is currency, where every day could be your last. Politicians promise its closure. Activists demand justice. But for those who live it, Rikers isn't a headline, it's reality. And until the day its gates are finally locked forever, the truth remains. Once you step onto that island, whether as inmate, guard, or visitor, Rikers never lets you go. Because the walls of Rikers don't just hold bodies. They hold stories. And those stories will haunt America long after the island itself is gone. Kindly, comment, and subscribe.